it's a 3-day event, but the first day is just in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're running masterclasses for the international federations,
Nice.
both in the area of, event efficiencies, legacy, sustainability, and also safety and security. So that masterclasses on the afternoon of the first day. Then we're at the Olympic Museum for a full program of content, and we'll be looking at all of the salient themes and issues which are affecting international federations.
Right. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sporting Global podcast. And today I'm here with Andy Rice. And Andy, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
You're very welcome. I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
A little stiff after a long weekend skiing in La Plagne, which is tough on a body as old as mine.
No, but I mean, you got to take advantage of the winter time before it all pass away. And as a Norwegian, it's always good, when other people are skiing besides us. So
yeah, last year, obviously, hardly anyone was skiing, so
right.
It's just an absolute pleasure to get back on the slopes.
Well, I can't imagine that, and I know for sure, I've been disappointing my fellow Norwegians. I haven't, skied enough, during the pandemic and during these challenging months. But I gotta just get back up on the horse, and I'm sure we'll be, ready
out there.
In no
Get your
time.
skis on.
But anyways, I mean, it's a pleasure having you here. We're gonna dive, of course, into your career, what you're doing, a little bit about your journey, your tips, some of the challenges that have been facing as well during this interesting stage and time that we're in these days. A lot of things happening in the world. We don't obviously have to go into details with everything, but first and foremost,
you've got 6 hours for all the challenges, have you?
I mean, we'll see how far we go. If maybe we have to do multiple episodes.
Well, let's see if anybody bothers to watch this one first.
Oh no, 100% they will. There's a lot of good insights, and it's a pleasure having you here. And so I think it's just to begin with this podcast, and I guess the journey here is tell us a little bit of how your journey in the sport industry began. I think it's always a fascinating way to hear how people entered and how it's been going in there.
Sure. So, I mean, like virtually everyone in the industry, my journey started with a passion for sport. So,
right.
I wasn't massively academic. I was okay, but I was a pretty good tennis player and I was a pretty good footballer. So, that was what I did throughout my youth.
Yeah.
I managed to somehow get my way to Loughborough University, and there I studied tennis and tennyson, so English and sport. And I guess, like most people at Loughborough in the 80s, I was planning to be a PE teacher originally.
Right.
But I think probably a sort of a little bit of an epiphany for me came in one of the courses when we were studying the business of sport, and I was introduced to this chap called Mark McCormack, who'd made his living by representing golfers, and I thought, oh well, that's quite an interesting area to get into.
Yeah.
Maybe I could follow that pursue that. It didn't quite work out. I went from Loughborough into advertising and blogging advertising space, thinking that I could get from advertising into sports marketing,
right.
which sort of happened, but I made my way up my career into publishing. And so I became a magazine publisher.
Yeah.
And ran a business, and then sold my business in the late 1990s, and did not make enough money to retire. So
right.
I used my publishing experience to get a job as a director of sport business. 1999. So I joined Sport Business Magazine, as it was. Right. It was a monthly news magazine for the global business of sport at that time, which clearly was a ridiculous thing to be, because as a news magazine, by the time it got to America, all the news was out of business, out of date. So
right.
I worked with Kevin Roberts there. Kevin worked for me, and over 9 years that was how I established my contacts in the business of sport.
Right. And then from that point, obviously, you know, and then leading up to now, you're obviously the CEO at Major Events International. And I'm like, take us a little bit first and foremost, like how you ended up at Major Events International. And I guess from that point, like, what are some of your, I guess, key responsibilities and tasks that you have?
Well, thanks for the promotion, Ollie. I appreciate that. I'm actually COO rather than CEO.
COO. Yeah, a little
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
There, we won't tell Dennis that I've been promoted.
I mean, like, we'll boost it up. No, but COO.
So
COO.
From sport business, I did a number of roles. In 2012, for example, I headed up sport at the Press Association. So that was a brilliant job to be doing during the London Olympics. We were the host national news agency at PA. I worked with Jimmy Worrell at Leaders for a while, which was fantastic. I think Jimmy's done a brilliant job there. Absolutely love his philosophy and what he's done there. And I worked for an organization in sports video for a while called Gigabox. I had a little bit of a dalliance into teaching.
Right.
So I sort of came back into the business of sport, having thought that I'd retired from it and gone into teaching, but that was an absolute nightmare, so much more difficult than I anticipated. So I managed to do a U-turn and come back to the business of sport.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Dennis, who was the CEO, or who is the CEO of MEI, I came to one of his events and I thought, this is quite an interesting organization to work for. And I think that Dennis could do with a right-hand man. So I basically persuaded him that was a good idea. So it was about 3 years ago. And you know, obviously Dennis and I have been building the business ever since. Right.
There you go. There you go. I mean, like, yeah, just got to make sure it's the right title. COO.
COO. Chief Operating Officer. Yeah.
So let's talk about like that role is specifically, like, just map out a little bit for those that are not like familiar with that kind of role, and I guess like how it impacts, you know, with I can't even speak today. It's out of the place. Major Events International, and so mapping out a little bit, like, I guess your responsibilities and tasks around that role, so people kind of like get an essence of, okay, what is it actually entitled? How does it relate to your work? You know, what you're doing.
Sure. Perhaps it's useful just to explain what MEI does a little bit. I mean, this graphic sort of explains what we do. We sit as an interface between global event organizers, teams, leagues, governing bodies, local organizing committees, host cities, what we call sports properties, and the suppliers who help deliver those events safely and profitably.
Right.
So really, I'm just a concierge. I'm just a glorified concierge. I spend my day just opening doors for people to go back and forth.
Right.
Seriously, I mean, I guess part of what I do is catch the things that Dennis throws over his shoulder.
Yeah.
So as the CEO, he's responsible for strategy and just driving the business forwards, and I'm responsible for sort of making those things happen.
Right. Right.
Part of that is building our network of best-in-class suppliers. So I'm responsible for recruiting other suppliers and joining our family, making sure that they are happy with the network fee that they pay, that they get good value for money. And also, as part of that ecosystem, whereby we're bringing buyers and sellers together, we run 3 major events a year. One focused on the UK and events in the broadest sense, so including festivals and air display shows and boat shows.
Yeah.
We've just had that at Manchester, Emirates Old Trafford.
Nice.
One focused on federations and host cities, which is coming up in Lausanne in June. And then one focused on major events, so the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games, or the Pan American Games, these big multi-sport games, and helping suppliers work out where the opportunities are. So my job is to help build those programs and recruit the sponsors and the speakers, and to support the operations team in bringing those to life.
Yeah, man, like it's a critical role, and I mean, like I know I'm just throwing down things to Eduardo all the time. So,
It is a lovely job. I'm very fortunate in as
yeah,
much as my job is to make other people's jobs easier.
right,
That basically is what my job is. So I sit alongside sales and marketing departments from suppliers and work out how I can support them both from a consultancy point of view, but also to leverage the assets that we have
right.
at MEI to open doors for them. So, it's nice because, you're always just trying to help somebody do a better job.
Absolutely, and then it's a really critical role as well. And obviously, from what I read as well, like the research that I did as well, like MEI is kind of like a management consultancy. You just talk a little bit about like limited ways of how you are working, but if you want to dive a little bit more into like specifically how you're helping these companies, the government agencies, and host organizations to succeed in the sport and see like what are some of the ways that you guys are doing that?
Sure. So if you think about our business in two clusters, if you like, two camps. So on the one hand, you have the sports properties.
Right.
So what we help them with is we help them run their events more efficiently. We help them find host cities.
Yep.
We help them find sponsors. We help with the transfer of best practice from a peer-to-peer perspective.
Right.
So all the people around my head here might come to one of our events free of charge. And so we help just with the dissemination of best practice and raising the bar.
Right.
With the other cluster of people, the suppliers, the vendors, what we do is we help them by giving them access to decision makers and specifiers, working out who the buyers are and helping them with procurement, which increasingly is important for these major events.
For sure.
With insight, with knowledge, who's buying what, what are the key hot buttons, what's going on in the world, where is World Archery taking their World Cup next year, where's the Invictus Games going, who's got the Commonwealth Games and why, that thing. And also just to help them increase their brand profile. So we have newsletters, we run publications, and we help them just wave their flags, if you like.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a very important role as well in the industry, especially with connecting the dots there, because in many ways as well, from finding these decision makers and stakeholders, it's quite a can be quite a complicated process, especially with these kind of big major events and also like the whole cities in many ways. There's a lot of new things and relationships and structures to keep in mind going there. So it's
a very complicated ecosystem.
Right.
If it was simple, we wouldn't exist.
Right.
We just help people navigate through this quite complicated ecosystem. And if I'm being flippant and somebody asks me at a dinner party what I do, I say, well, I'm in the oil business. I just lubricate the wheels of commerce in the business of sport, and that's what it is. It's just lubricating something that would possibly happen or possibly not happen, but we just try and make it a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I think I'm going to use that oil reference more. I mean, like being from an oil country, I guess.
There you go.
We
definitely need to cuddle up to Norway at the moment with everything that's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hey, I'm sure we'll figure something out in that sense. But let's talk a little bit about the summits though. And you touched a little bit upon it. Obviously, I think we have to we'll go more a little bit specifically into the Host of Federation Summit in Lausanne in June. Obviously, that coming up soon. But just talk a little bit more in depth, because you mentioned the 3 different major events that you guys are hosting, and a little bit more about like what kind of topics, what kind of audience, like what can people expect? Yeah, and is there like invites only? Like, where are some ways where people can whomever can attend? Like, what are the structure here?
Yeah, so if we look towards June and the Hosts and Federation Summit in Lausanne, one of the things that I loved about working at Sport Business was going to Sportel every year down in Monaco.
Right.
And what I loved about Sportel was just how much business was done there. You know, some conferences and summits are, you know, they're about networking, they're about content, but there isn't that much business being done. And people always referred to Sportel as a marketplace, you know, where actually, you know, deals were being done. What we're trying to do is we're trying to replicate that in June, to make it a marketplace for hosts and international federations to come together and do some deals.
Right.
Because it's an exciting and synergistic or symbiotic relationship that international hosts and international rights holders have. Sometimes the power is on one side, sometimes the power is on the other.
Right.
Often it's about, you know, working together to maximize the event legacy. And so that's the objective of June. And then obviously around the buzz of what's going on between those guys meeting, there'll be suppliers wanting to talk about, you know, how they can make those events safer and more profitable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very great way to see sort of like the importance as well to building that, you know, not necessarily just a meeting place, but a way where actually, you know, business can, you know, happen. And I think that's a big challenge when it comes to like, you know, these type of events in general, just because like, is it more of a just like, oh, we get like some new insights, or is like, can we actually get down to business? Because that's essentially what everyone wants to get down to, like, what's the value, right? What is the ROI here? And so facilitating that is, it's a big thing, but like, talk a little bit about like how you guys are facilitating that and just merging and making sure that, okay, that can actually happen, because it is a big challenge. And as a consequence, our structure is quite different than normal. So the rights holders, the sports properties, come free. They come as our guests. They don't have to pay, which means that the vast majority of people, you know, in my halo of influence here, will be coming. Obviously, the timing is interesting because the ASWAF General Assembly is on the middle day of our summit, which means that all the general secretaries from ASWAF will be on either online or in Lausanne. And their operations team will also be in Lausanne, which means that they'll be able to join us at the Olympic Museum, which is where we're heading. So with every respect to the general secretaries, we're not really interested in them because they don't do the real work. We're interested in their teams, their operational teams that are actually running these events and working out how to monetize the rights for both the IFs and also the NGBs, which cascade down. So to answer your question, what we're trying to do, and you used the word facilitate when we were discussing your role in you know, at the beginning of this call. So we're actually facilitating and organizing specific meetings. So we're not just relying on serendipity for the right people to get together. We're actually setting up meetings between host cities and international federations and host cities, because obviously certain people want to meet certain people. So we're formalizing that, if you like. Well, I mean, like, at the end of the day, and we talked about it too, like, I mean, like, there's a reason why we both exist, right? So you need those facilitators to make things a little bit smoother, you know, making sure that things are running a bit more efficient, faster. And
what I like about you guys is that you're improving the funnel of the talent coming into the industry, which is, you know, why we're very, very happy to support you.
Well, we appreciate that, and we're happy to support you as well, especially at the upcoming event. And I'm excited to be back in Switzerland, in Lausanne. I haven't been there. It's like the one place that reminds me of Norway, you know. So it's always
well, especially Lausanne, you know, on Lake Geneva. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful,
stunning. It's definitely one of my favorite places by far, like that I've been to so far. I mean, like, I still have a lot of exploring to do, but definitely one of my highlight cities. So I can't wait to be back there and meet people more in person as well, which I think it's a nice change. You know, it's been a lot of.
Well, it's a 3-day event, but the first day is just in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're running masterclasses for the international federations,
Nice.
both in the area of, event efficiencies, legacy, sustainability, and also safety and security. So that masterclasses on the afternoon of the first day. Then we're at the Olympic Museum for a full program of content, and we'll be looking at all of the salient themes and issues which are affecting international federations as they move forward. So diversity, sustainability, maximizing revenues from their rights, minimizing their costs, and just trying to share best practice and allow the international federations to really work as efficiently as possible, because we know at the end of the day their fundamental role is to encourage more people to do their sport. So that's got to be good for all of us. If we can build from the bottom and get more people playing sport, whatever it might be, that's got to be a great thing.
No, for sure. I mean, like, the infrastructure has to be in place, right? The foundation. We always talk about the foundation, and it's one of the critical things. And especially with all the changes that have happened in the world, like, that foundation is more important than anything else at this stage, in order to make sure that things are, moving forward. And then luckily, with like some innovation, technology, and upcoming companies, can also, like, bridge that to speed up the process, make it more efficient. And I think, I think this is a really good segue into, some of the upcoming trends that I think you are seeing, from working with all these different kind of stakeholders in the industry, with your vast experience obviously as well. And if you wanted to, like, map up a little bit of, like, what are some of the upcoming trends that you see and that you think that, or that you feel that the sports students that are coming in now should sort of, like, keep an eye on when they're, in the process of building their professional career, because things are changing fast.
They are changing fast, and if you'd have asked me this question about a month ago, I'd have put NFTs at the top of the list, and recommended that everybody understands just how that NFT ecosystem works in terms of digital assets. I'm not saying that the bubble has burst. I am saying just that there seems to be a cooling off of that space, and people are actually saying, okay, well, maybe this was overhyped a little bit. What isn't overhyped, and in answer to your question, would be the metaverse. So what your students need to understand, and probably will be able to do within 5 minutes more than me, is to understand how to navigate the metaverse, what that means for the world of sport. We work, as you know, with a network of best-in-class suppliers. One of our members is End-to-End, and they create a virtual stadium that allows fans to actually have an amazing experience in the virtual world. Go into certain rooms and see interviews with players, go into the changing room and see what's going on there. So that is just the very tip, the very cutting edge of what the fan experience is going to be like in 5-10 years. I think all fans will have a digital pass. And the beauty of this, of course, is that you can be anywhere in the world and access a virtual stadium. And that will obviously encourage and drive the demand to be part of that physical experience. That could just become a bucket list. I have to go to the new camp once in my life, because I've been spending the last 5 years visiting the stadium virtually. That's got to be great for a sports rights holder.
No, for sure. And I think it's, of course, like, it opens up a different kind of audience too, right? For the clubs and organizations, especially major events, right? And well, everyone that are running some sort of, physical event or game, is that it opens up, to a different kind of audience where, everyone in the world can, go there and watch the game. And in a sense as well, it's just, you, instead of having, okay, there's locked 75,000 seats, you can suddenly have 200,000 people watching the same game.
No, they probably wouldn't watch the game, because of the rights issues.
Right.
It would enhance their pre-match and post-match experience, or even after. They could meet their mates in virtual space as as avatars.
Right.
The mind the creativity really starts to get really, really interesting. And of course, there are significant revenue opportunities here, in terms of NFTs, digital assets, selling merchandising, selling different levels of access, different levels of membership. It can, your students have an amazing opportunity if they can really get their head round how to monetize the metaverse.
Right. No, I think it's a really important, key area that these students need to kind of like keep an eye on and focus on and try to understand as much as they can. And obviously, you talked a lot about the opportunities, with the metaverse and sort of like the aspect of it. But what are some of the challenges that you see with it that sort of like are impacting, I guess, in a sense, the industry now, and that kind of like building up and learning this, because obviously it's a new world. It's a new thing to keep in mind. And yeah, what are some of the challenges you see with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the challenges come down to almost the fact that there is such a plethora of opportunities, and there is no clear path. There will be a lot of failures. I'm old enough to remember the dot-com boom and bust. So, many of your students won't believe that lots of digital web companies went bust in 2001.
Yeah.
There was an online solution called Quokka, which got business from the IOC and was a sailing app that followed the America's Cup in real time. Brilliant, but went bust.
Right.
So I think that there will be, often the pioneers do get the arrows, which is not ideal. So I think getting the timing right, I think, is one of the big challenges. I think sport has responded very well to the Russian crisis. I think that often sport hesitates to take a position. I think in this particular case, it has done well, and and ironically, the IOC led the way really, and FIFA then followed, and the other international federations are now following through. And I think we have to totally ostracize Russia and make their population realize that whatever they may be seeing and reading in the media, actually this stuff is really, really Russia's fault, and the world is hating us for it. So I think that obviously navigating our way out of that geopolitical crisis is a major challenge. But I think sport is definitely playing its part in the same way it did with bringing apartheid down.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, like, I studied that case as well. Just back in school, I had the pleasure to go 2 weeks in South Africa, as one of my professors were South African, and so we went down there and we visited all this stuff, and we talked about everything that is happening. And it's very interesting, to see the power of sports and sort of like the value that it can bring. And of course, now more than ever, it's important that sport takes its responsibility in a sense of what they can do. And I think with the momentum, and I guess with whether or not, like, pandemic of course was very challenging, and it still kind of is in many ways, because it's still not over, so in a sense. So it's kind of like in a way where I think the aspect of responding and like how fast you need to respond is like, it's just been boosting, I guess, in the industry to be more fast paced, probably more than it had to, especially from the organizational standpoint, which in a sense leads to more innovation. So I think it's in the right spot. And obviously that's where I think, of course, where you talked about the metaverse and the how the industry has sort of like been, I guess, not necessarily adapting to it, but understanding it a little bit more, and perhaps that pace will, reflect the integration of it. So it's definitely like, you know, something to keep in mind. And I wanted to just wrap up a little bit here with more specifically, I guess, because obviously we talked about, you know, upcoming trends, you know, challenges, things that, you know, you are working on, MEI as well, and sort of like all this good stuff. But I wanted to like just take a step back here, just think a little bit like going into the industry, you know, coming in fresh here as a student, and there are a lot of people that obviously, you know, are attracted and wants to be part of the sports, and just give them sort of like I guess in a sense a reality check of like what are some of the tips that you would give them for those that are, you know, now looking to get a career in sport.
Well, I sort of need to apologize because I may make a contentious statement here. I do strongly believe that once you have your first degree under your belt, there is no better education than getting into a sports business, understanding how it works and how the business of sport works. With every respect to universities that are running master's courses, unfortunately, those courses tend to be way behind the trend. Not leading, they are following the trend. The industry, as you say, is changing so fast, and business is having to adapt incredibly fast to meet those needs, and education just is not catching up.
Right.
I, as a recruiter, will always prefer somebody with 2 years of experience in a sports marketing agency or working for a club or a league than 2 years doing an academic course. And you know, if it takes doing an internship or doing what it takes to get into that workspace and to build that vocational experience, that would be my advice. Don't get there as soon as possible. I think a first degree is important, but then there comes a time when you need to weigh up. Okay, well, do I do a master's? Do I do a PhD?
Right.
You know, if you want to get into the business of sport, you might have to be there for free. You might have to make the coffee. You might have to do the filing. But get in there and network and use LinkedIn and just build your network of friends, and ask the people that you're working with to introduce you and to challenge you, and ask them to go into meetings so that you can understand what's going on and the different nuances. Just learn that way. That would be my advice.
Oh, 100%. I think it's a very critical, you know, stage that people are in at this point too, where you kind of like have to almost feel like you have to make a decision, and I think a lot of people are expecting like you have to do, you know, another degree and stuff like that. And I think the key element and what you talk about as well is just, you know, it's a lot of great stuff you can learn in school, but at the end of the day, you need to get out there and getting that foot in the door, getting experience, and understanding as well that, you know, you have to start from scratch. And I'm going to use a personal example just for people to understand sometimes like what you have to do, because I think it's important. And so obviously, you know, I think most of the people that are listening at this point know that I'm Norwegian and I started my career there. But after I graduated my bachelor degree, like I got a job offer for like a sports director job in a pretty okay club in Norway. Nothing, you know, crazy, but not bad for being like 23 at that point. And so I was like, okay, it's a solid offer. Like I can get, you know, start kind of like my career. And I was in a good spot, but I was like, I want to be more internationally. And so I always had like an international mindset, which obviously reflects Sporting Global and what it is today. But I didn't know about that at that point. But so I decided to go to the US and pursue my master there, because I wanted to learn, you know, the American industry. You know, it's different from the European, the way, you know, it works over here and in Norway as well. And going there, I knew I had to start from scratch. You know, like I couldn't expect to like just get like a full-time job, because it's a different market. And so first thing I did was I volunteered, and then I had an unpaid internship for 8 months, and then I got paid, and then I built my way up. And so it takes time, but if you know that you have the knowledge and the value, it will pay off. But you have to understand that you have to build your way up, you know, and it takes time.
And the other thing that I would like to say to young people is everyone says life is short.
Right.
It isn't. Life is long. You know, you've got time to fit stuff in.
Right.
You really have.
Yeah.
And you know, go out, see the world, travel, broaden your horizons, and even start another career. You know, if you can build some experience in marketing or in sales or in digital coding in another career and then come into sport, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's what I did. I had 10 years in a, well, 15 years in a completely non-sports related world.
Right.
I was building my toolkit, and I was building skills I could transfer into sport. So if your ambition is to get into the business of sport, don't feel that you failed if you haven't got there in the first couple of years. There's always times when you can jump over.
Yeah, and there's so many ways, you know, to enter the industry, to be part of the industry. And I mean, like the more we share, I mean, like it's just a perfect example, like how many different kind of stakeholders and organizations that you are working with, you know, through MIE. And I mean, like it's just a way where, you know, you can take a look at the photo behind you and say, like, these are all organizations that are involved in sports, you know, that are working in an industry that you potentially can work for, and understanding that it's not just, you know, FIFA or UEFA or like all the biggest club that you think of. Of course you can do that. There's many people that do that too, but there's plenty of opportunities, and I think that's a very key important.
We haven't even mentioned the esport, and you know that continues to be another burgeoning trend, and you know that's not going to go away. You know, that's only going to become more mainstream. It's going to, in the same way that extreme sports, you know, started as a peripheral, then became mainstream. It's exactly the same with esports.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It's already, you know, booming fast, and it's being consistent. And I think they were probably one of the sectors of the industry, especially during the pandemic, that really boosted of it, because I mean, like, it's digital, so they could kind of like almost continue what they were doing already.
Yeah.
So it was a very, very good way, and I guess for that sector of the industry to continue their growth, and of course challenges as well with the money, you know, involved in the industry, and the struggles of that with the different kind of challenges. But there's a lot of potential in the industry. You just need to know where to poke and where to sort of like start gaining. And I do believe, at least for everyone that were tuning in, that, you know, you got like some insights, some good tips along the way. I know for sure, you know, it was a pleasure, you know, speaking with you, Andy, and hearing your thoughts and some of the trends, what you guys are working on. And, you know, it was a pleasure having you part of this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ollie. It was a pleasure talking to you. Pleasure being on the cast.
Absolutely. Well, as a final...
My boss is just calling, so I better take it.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much.